I'm really excited to have Alice and Tim joining me today. So for those of you who haven't met me, I'm Kate. I'm the founder and CEO at the Planetary Accounting Network, and you stuck with me for the first little while because I'm going to do a bit of an introduction to those of you who haven't already been working with us about what planetary accounting is and who we are. I have actually seen a few familiar faces pop up from my previous role. I used to be the Director of Sustainability at Becker, so nice to see you know who you are. And but I'd just like to do a quick introduction to Alice and Tim. So Alice is one of our a senior planetary accountant at PAN, and she joined us about 6 months ago, I think, from Deloitte's sustainability team. And I think despite Alice having a background in finance before she worked in sustainability, I think her least favourite thing about working at PAN is that she has to have accountant in her role title. So please note that planetary accountant is very different to an accountant. Tim and I met actually in a car on the way to the airport in Christchurch, in Queenstown. Tim had come down to Wanaka for a conference on sustainability, and we discovered that we had a shared conflicting passions of snow sports and sustainability, which actually is quite prevalent through the team. Alice is also a passionate skier, and I think our chair of the board is who is Richard Lauder, who's on the call, is also a very passionate skier and sustainability advocate, so it's a bit challenging. But Tim's actually the OG B-Corp consultant in New Zealand, and I called Tim a couple of weeks ago to say, hey, we've had a query from somebody about how much our Planetary Facts assessment process aligns with B-Corp, and I'm really pleased I made the call, and also that I have Tim and here to talk about that today, because it's quite a complex area, and so I'm sure a lot of you will have lots of questions for Tim that Alice and I would really pleased not to try to answer. So if you guys want to give a little hello, there's Alice and Tim on the screen, and I'll jump into a bit of an intro. So I think what we can all agree, sort of whatever sector or business we are, is that it's really hard to be a sustainable business. Sorry, I'm having troubles changing the slide. Let me just make sure I'm on the right system. Really hard to be a sustainable business. Firstly, there's this immense gap between the science and action. So, you know, we're all talking about 1.5 degrees. Actually, increasingly, the science is suggesting that 1.5 degrees is perhaps out of reach. But we've seen a sort of a big improvement in the carbon and climate change space, where we're bringing science-based carbon budgets down to business decision-making level through science-based targets, global budgets, Paris agreements that align with 1.5 or don't. So that's really changed the way that we do carbon accounting and assess our long-term strategies. But the problem is that it's actually not just about carbon and climate change. There are 9 mission-critical planetary boundaries. So if we just resolve climate change, which is a big enough challenge in itself, and we don't consider the way that we use water, biodiversity, novel entities, you know, the plastic and waste that we're putting into the environment, land system change, deforestation, flows of things like nitrogen and phosphorus into waterways, then we're still at risk of fundamentally changing the state of the planet. And if the planet's needs weren't enough, it's actually also people are really demanding very credible, highly ambitious, sustainable outcomes. But they're really wary of anything businesses say about their environmental performance. The sort of greenwashing is everywhere at the moment, and you can see initiatives like Consumer NZ looking at how to cut through that and allow those businesses that really are making big advancements in that space to be able to cut through and prove that in a way that's really credible. And we've also seen a really huge sort of an accelerating increase in the regulatory landscape. So I, in my previous role, spent quite a lot of time speaking to executive teams and boards about their challenges, and that this is the one that they were most nervous about. It's what are the regulations that are coming down the pipeline, and how can we prepare for them? How do we measure how far our unsustainability risk or our non-sustainability risk is, and what we need to do about it so that we're ready for those changes to the regulation. What I also have found in almost all of my conversations with businesses, that for the most part, businesses are really on board now. They really want to do the right thing, and they are really looking at how they can transform their operations, look at products and services that are good for the planet. But actually, they don't have the tools they need to do that. It's already very time intensive and expensive to measure carbon footprints, and to get stakeholders on board and understand what those mean is another challenge of itself. And so when you're starting to say, oh, look, it's not just carbon, and we need to think about water and waste and biodiversity, it can feel really overwhelming. The planetary boundaries framework that I flashed up before around the science is a framework that was developed by a group of internationally leading scientists back in 2009, and it really sets the scene of what we need from an environmental perspective. It gives you that long-term target, but it's set up in a bunch of metrics that are really difficult to use at a business level. And so, for example, it says, the global extinction rate can't exceed 10 species per million species per year. Now, that's really useful to understand how far away we are from good in a global perspective, but it's very difficult to use that at a business level for our decisions. And so at Planetary Accounting Network, we use a framework called Planetary Accounting, surprisingly enough, that actually translates the science of the planetary boundaries into an environmental accounting framework that looks really a lot like carbon accounting, but extends across all of those critical environmental limits. Planetary accounting is the science basis or the environmental basis of donor economics, which many people have heard of donor economics and not planetary boundaries, but they're kind of one and the same thing from an environmental perspective. And the two frameworks, planetary boundaries and planetary accounting, also map really well across the sustainable development goals. But what planetary accounting does is it takes these global frameworks and converts it into something that's actually useful for decision making. And it's something that you can use at almost any scale. So just like carbon accounting, you can use it at a product scale, at a community scale, at a corporate scale. Same with planetary accounting. And so today we're going to really talk about the product scale, but we also work at that community level, at the corporate level, setting planetary science-based targets for businesses, at the regional level. So we've just done the first cut of Dunedin's planetary accounts, and at a national level. So it's a framework that can be used to connect activities at these different levels, measure them, and put that context around it to say how good is good enough, how far do we need to go. Planetary accounting is a peer-reviewed framework, so it was published in a Springer journal in 2018 and as a Springer textbook in 2019, and it has a lot of support from the international community. So before he passed away, Will Stephen was immensely supportive on the planetary accounting journey. We've still got Jorgen Randers, who was the original author of the Limits to Growth book, for any of you who've read that in 1950, the first publication that said the planet did have limits, and others like Peter Newman from the IPCC. So it's very much grounded in science, but focused on how to translate that science into action. At PAN, so we're PAN Planetary Accounting Network is a charitable trust, and at our core, we're the custodians of planetary accounting, and so we're specifically non-profits so that we can really make sure the framework remains credible as we advance it and update it to remain aligned with the science. And in addition to maintaining the framework, our key activities are engagement, so we we do talks and help people to understand that we need to think about more than just carbon. We do training. So over the past 12 months, our network have sort of started to have access to regular training sessions, and we're just in the process of digitising them to make them more accessible. And then we do applications, and they range from bespoke applications where we help organisations with their specific challenges that need a planetary accounting lens, which is very varied, and to things that PAN leads, like the Planetary Facts program that Alice is going to tell you all about. Our network is pretty broad, so I guess a little bit like Sustainable Business Network or Sustainable Business Council. Members can join us, and they range from businesses and universities to local government and non-profit organisations. Most of the network is New Zealand, but it is starting to become increasingly global over time. We're a pretty young organisation and haven't been around for that many years. We were founded in 2019, but the thing that we're really proud of is our impact. And so last year we estimate that for every $100 contributed to PAN, we enabled others to avoid 30 tonnes of carbon, almost 100 cubic metres squared of deforestation. I can't actually read the numbers or know them off the top of my head because it's a very small screen. But our goal is really to support others to make the changes that are needed to stay within the planet's limits. And the primary focus that we've had over the past 12 months has really been on our Planetary Facts program. So I'm going to hand over to Alice to let her tell you all about it.
Cool, thanks, Kate. So one of our exciting initiatives at PAN, and the reason for this webinar, is Planetary Facts. Inspired by nutritional facts on food, we thought, imagine if it was easy for businesses to access, understand, and communicate the environmental performance of products, and that it was underpinned by credible science. The things we love about nutritional facts is that they provide holistic, consistent, and comparable data. So if I were to pick up a box of frozen fish at the supermarket and look at this compared to my can of tomatoes, say, I can compare and contrast these two things, and they provide context. So not just, hey, this fish has 10 grams of protein, but also that is 15% of a recommended daily intake. False numbers, by the way. It doesn't say it's good or bad, but it gives me the context I need to make decisions. In contrast, if I look at the environmental labels on the same products, I might see Marine Stewardship Certified and Organic. Oh, there's a bit of feedback there. Can everyone just remain on mute? Thank you. MSC sounds good, but it would take me a lot of time to do the research to find out what this actually means, which I'm unlikely to do for every different eco-label I see. And organic is great, but it's also a very narrow view. So these tomatoes could still have a very high carbon or water footprint, for example, and it's just not disclosed. Critically, there is no basis for comparison. Even just looking at tins of tomatoes, I might see that one is organic and another is locally produced. Which is better? I couldn't say. Another positive note about nutritional facts is that it lends itself to different customer preferences. I personally check sugar content of products, while others might be all about protein. It's the same for Planetary Facts. While all of the planetary boundaries are important, many individuals are more concerned about one than the other. So providing this broader perspective enables broader engagement. Unfortunately, nutritional fact labels are not as widely used as they might be because customers find them difficult to understand. So we set out to take the best parts of nutritional facts through to Planetary Facts, but to do it in a way that makes it really accessible and easy to understand. We kicked this program off around 2 years ago, and a lot of hard work has already taken place. We worked with industry leaders such as Jeremy Hill, who's Fonterra's Chief Science Officer, David Benatar, the Warehouse Group's Chief Sustainability Officer, and experts like ThinkStep Director Dr. Jeff Vickers and Planetary Boundaries author Will Stephan to develop a methodology for the calculation of planetary facts. We also conducted consumer research with Massey University and held focus groups to co-design communications and concept designs for planetary facts labels. We knew businesses were spending a lot of money on life cycle assessments, but not finding them that valuable because they were struggling to understand the results. And the results are not set in context, so it's really hard to interpret them and to answer the question, how good is good enough? Therefore, we iterated the Planetary Facts methodology to advance life cycle standards and to set the results in the context of the planetary boundaries and to allow comparability with any other product. Ultimately, what Planetary Facts aims to do is to give businesses all the value of LCAs in a report that's easy to understand and without the price tag. What we want to achieve with Planetary Facts is to fundamentally change the way businesses design their products and communicate the environmental impact of these products. We want to step away from the incremental change we're currently seeing and into innovative and transformational systems change at a product level. If a company like Toyota, say, had Planetary Facts 15 years ago, they would never have committed so much time and energy to improving the fuel efficiency of combustion engines, as they would have been able to see that these were not part of a sustainable future. They would have committed more effort to innovative transport solutions, possibly EVs, possibly a shift away from private vehicles altogether, to considering how to optimize transport as a service or design effective public transport systems. Today, we're inviting leading companies to have early access to Planetary Facts assessments as part of our pilot. By joining the pilot, you'll get Planetary Facts results and we'll get to test the assumptions that have already been established in our methodology. As a pilot partner, you'll also get to inform the process before it gets launched. You'll have a seat on the steering committee, meaning you'll be able to gain insight from and provide direction to the program. Your brand will also be amongst the first to market with a Planetary Facts label. So what does it actually look like? If you join up to the Planetary Facts pilot, you have two options. If you're a small to medium-sized business, you'll most likely be on the desktop side. We'll give you a template to fill in with the data we need, and you'll get a report detailing 10 environmental footprints: carbon, agricultural greenhouse gases, waste, water, biodiversity, ozone, air quality, nitrogen, phosphorus, and deforestation in context, so you can see the performance in context of the planetary boundaries, with a detailed breakdown showing the hotspots in your supply chain to help you to identify and prioritise areas for improvement. PAN will conduct a Planetary Facts assessment for 3 or more similar products. So when we say similar, we mean a similar supply chain rather than end product. So for example, any cotton apparel would be considered similar, whether it was a t-shirt, hat, or a pair of shorts. If you have a lot of SKUs across a similar product category, e.g. cotton apparel, you may prefer to sign up to PAN's sister company, Planetary Insights Early Access Program, which gives you pre-release access to a Planetary Facts calculator so that you can undertake planetary accounting assessments for all your products in-house. This option still gives you access to all the pilot benefits, such as the position on the steering group. Now, signing up to the pilot does not mean you have to disclose your results to anyone. You decide whether to move on to phase 2. However, those who are interested in the labelling piece and the associated sustainability leadership and PR that comes with it, then they'll get the opportunity to join the label pilot. We will go out to the market with these labels and to test them with real customers, getting feedback through surveys and interviews. Depending on timing, we'll have a soft launch and a formal launch so that those who want to start using labels right away aren't held up. So what will the assessments look like? Displayed here are some mock pages from our assessment report using a fictional t-shirt for illustrative purposes. The report will first lay out the life cycle of the product from cradle to grave and the associated life cycle stages, which in this case range from cotton farming through the manufacturing process and onto the retail store before usage and end of life. The Planetary Facts assessment will provide you with 10 environmental footprints for your product against a recommended daily limit, i.e. the average impact of that product per capita within scientific global limits. In the example shown here, impacts are represented by yellow to red shading, whereas regeneration can also be represented with a green wedge. In this example, there are 2 green wedges, as this particular product, which is not the t-shirt by the way, is contributing to reforestation and diverting or extracting waste from landfill. Next, we'll provide you with a breakdown of each of the 10 impacts. So displayed here, we have carbon, waste and water by life cycle stage, which can help you focus your efforts on the areas with the greatest environmental impact relative to the others. We'll also break down the impact for each life cycle stage so you can identify the environmental hotspots across your supply chain. So now that you understand the fundamentals of Planetary Facts, what might drive you to join the pilot? By joining us, you and your business will be demonstrating sustainability leadership by promoting a system-wide change to sustainability. You'll be taking a holistic view of your environmental footprint, promoting both innovation and transparency. Planetary Facts provide you the same level of data as an LCA, but with a streamlined and more affordable approach. A Planetary Facts assessment provides insights into each of the 10 impacts, carbon, biodiversity, waste, etc., along each step of your supply chain. By reporting the impacts against a science-based recommended daily limit, you'll be equipped with data to compare the relative importance of different impacts, which will in turn help you prioritise action. Planetary Facts are independent, auditable, and backed in robust science, meaning you'll be reporting credible information that cuts through the greenwashing movement. You'll also be the first to market with the next generation of eco-labels. By joining the program, you'll have access to customer insights about your products as we perform further testing and validation with customer focus groups. By having a seat amongst the steering group, you'll have the opportunity to provide direction to the program and also to know firsthand what's coming to market. Planetary Facts will help get your business on the pathway to a sustainability strategy that looks beyond carbon. As Planetary Facts synthesize complex data into easily understandable impacts, you'll be able to take Planetary Facts to your boardroom, product designers, supply chain managers, the list goes on. Joining Planetary Facts will also help you gain brand recognition. When we first showed this to chief sustainability officers, they said, "This is the future of sustainability." By joining the program, you'll be acknowledged for your leadership through our Planetary Facts marketing and education campaigns, website, and associated communications. And in case you needed a further reason to join the Planetary Facts program, we've been chatting to Tim Jones, the go-to for all things B-Corp, and it turns out completing a Planetary Facts assessment for your products could gain you a lot of points in your B-Corp impact assessment. So Tim, the virtual floor is yours to let us know the details.
Excellent. Yeah, I might need you to be my slide person, as I don't have that. Yeah, so kia ora koutou to everyone. Thanks for coming along, and obviously thanks to Kate and Alice for the invite. Yes, I'm Tim. I run a company called Grow Good, based in good old Otatahi, Christchurch, and fundamentally we specialise in helping companies navigate the B-Corp impact assessment to be able to do it, get through it more efficiently, quickly, with a bit more fun, dare I say, because it can be quite a dry online assessment tool. So that's pretty much all you need to know about me. Next slide, please, whoever's running the slideshow. So what is a B Corporation? Will that be a good place to start? So B corporations are this new form of business that seek to balance purpose and profit. So rather than solely focusing on maximizing shareholder return and maximizing profit, they must consider the impact of their operations on their community, their workers, the planet, their customers, and all other stakeholders. And it's fundamentally a independent verification of a company's social and environmental performance. So to get the B Corp certification, you go through an initial self-assessment, which is where we help people just navigate that self-assessment. And once you've gone through that assessment, and you need to score a minimum of 80 out of 200 points on that assessment, once you've scored over the 80 mark, you submit that assessment then for independent verification with the team at B Lab. So B Lab, a bit like PAN, are a not-for-profit organisation who run the audit side of the process. So you go through this independent verification, and if you're successful getting through the audit process, you will then be able to demonstrate that your organisation is operating to the highest levels of transparency and accountability when it comes to your social and environmental performance. And the million-dollar question I always get asked is, what does the B stand for? Well, the B stands for benefit. So beyond just making a financial return to your shareholders, what benefit is your business providing to people and planet? Next slide, please. Cool. So beyond it being, I guess, a certification framework, and there's quite a few of those out there, it is, like I said, a verification of claims, and I guess, yeah, the good that you're doing. I think most people who would be listening into this webinar would be well aware of terms like greenwashing. That's one of the reasons why I really like B Corp, because you can make claims, you can say that you're doing stuff, but unless it can be audited and independently verified by a third party, then you don't really get to make those claims through the B Corp lens. So it's pretty, pretty rigorous on that side. Beyond that, it is also a movement in a community of like-minded businesses. We're just over about 115 B Corps in New Zealand currently. There's about 7,000 businesses globally who are B Corp certified. And they all have this one common goal of being the best for the world, not the best in the world. So a like-minded community of businesses all pushing for the same outcome fundamentally. And then perhaps more importantly, it's a commitment. To get the B Corp certification is not that easy. About 30% of companies who start the journey actually get through and complete certification. But it's a commitment in that regard, but it's also a commitment for you as a business to say that, yeah, we are aiming to operate at the highest levels of impact as an organization. And lastly, it's an impact guide. So quite often we will find with most companies, there's a bunch of good stuff that you are doing in your business. So let's collect that and let's get that verified. But the B Corp assessment is a really, really useful tool particularly if you're early on in your sustainability journey and you don't really know where to start, or if you feel like you're at an advanced level and you want to step up and get that verification. But it's a really easy to use framework in terms of understanding at the high level, where are we doing good, but as an impact guide, where could we look to do more good? And it's very just a useful framework to illuminate areas in your business that you perhaps just hadn't previously considered. Next slide, please. Cool. So looking at the B Corp assessment in a bit more depth, the B Corp assessment looks at your business across 5 main areas of governance, workers, community, environment, and then your customer model. So what is it that you're selling and how are you providing it into the market? Can you go to the next slide? I can't remember what my next slide is off the top of my head. There we go. Cool. So looking at it in a bit more detail, I thought I was going to have this slide. looking across the 5 areas in a bit more detail. So the governance looks mainly at ethics and transparency. So who owns the business? Is it easy for someone to find out who owns the business? Or have you got 50 shell companies ending up in the Bahamas somewhere, and we don't actually really know who owns your business? Beyond financial reporting, are you doing social and environmental impact reporting? Do you have KPIs within the company? So are there people within the company who are responsible for monitoring social and environmental impact? The workers section looks, so in New Zealand, we typically score quite a few points. So yeah, I should just back up the track a bit. So to get B-Corp certified, you need to score 80 out of 200 points on this self-assessment. So that's why there's numbers like the 8.1, the 30.6. So under the workers section, Kiwi companies typically score pretty well because we have what I would call favourable trade winds. So we have state-provided healthcare, state-provided superannuation, state-provided leave entitlement, sick leave entitlement, so on and so forth. So beyond compensation, which is where that would all be captured, the workers section really looks at workforce development. So opportunities for career path development, training, on-the-job skills training, cross-skills training, so on and so forth. Community, it kind of felt like they ran out of options as to where to put stuff, because it did feel like they sort of jammed quite a few things into community. So it looks at local job creation. It looks at diversity of ownership, management and employees. It looks at charitable work that you do. So that could be volunteer work or pro bono, in kind, or cash donations that you might have made. And it also includes supply chain. So that's quite a chunky section for some, particularly companies with a product. And then the environment at the high level is inputs and outputs. So energy use, where do we get our energy from? How much waste are we producing? How much water are we using? And then, yeah, obviously emissions and other outputs that you might have. And then lastly, the customer section at the high level looks at, do we have customer guarantees, warranties? Are we tracking customer satisfaction? Are we checking customer outcomes long term? And so, like I said, the aim is to get 80 out of 200 points across the assessment. However, you will see around the bottom of the slides and on the right-hand side, as you're looking at the screen, there is the dark blue boxes with the light blue writing in. So the assessment actually has 2 levels. So the standard questions on the B-Corp impact assessment are what are called operational questions. So whilst you're running your business, what are we doing above and beyond, basic requirements to provide more benefit to our stakeholders? The dark blue boxes indicate what are called an IBM, or an impact business model. And that's basically if you can demonstrate that you have gone out of your way to create more positive social or environmental impact in your business, then you get rewarded by, I guess, depending on your age range, it's either a Super Mario bonus level, or it's kind of going, one client described it as Pokemon hunting. You're kind of looking for these little gold nuggets, these truffles where the higher points sit. So if you look at a company like Patagonia, they are about a 150 out of 200 points B Corp, so very high scoring B Corp. So they have unlocked a handful of impact business models. So just really quickly, under the governance one, for you to be a B Corp now, you have to unlock the mission lock IBM. And that basically means you need to update your constitution or other corporate governing document to include a stakeholder clause and a purpose clause, which basically states, in summary, whilst aiming to make profit, this company will have a higher purpose, and it will at all times consider the impact of its operations on all its stakeholders. So that's kind of coming into alignment with, in the UK, the Companies Act has been updated not so long ago to say that you can choose to consider those things, but B Corp going one step ahead and saying, no, you must consider those in all your decisions. Under the workers, the 2 that we typically see people get would be worker ownership. So basically 40% of the company has to be owned by employees, or a workforce development program. So providing pathways to employment for people who typically haven't had access to employment. So that could be people with a disability, for example. The community one, the 2 most common ones would be a fair trade supply chain, or what's called design to give, where basically you commit to giving away a significant proportion of either revenue or profits to a charity. The customer one, typically, so we unlock a customer impact business model because we are basically offering consulting advisory around businesses becoming better. So we unlock one under education. Other typical examples would be having a health-based product. So if you're selling into the healthcare system, typically that might unlock an impact business model. But really the crux of where, Kate and Alice can really help, and the planetary accounting model is under the environmental one. So the environmental impact business models, there's a handful of different ones actually, and there's also under the governance section, there's some ways where the Planetary Accounting Network team can really help you, because the key to successfully completing B-Corp is A, to know that you're doing what you're doing, but B, is to be able to provide evidence that backs up the claims that you're making, and that's how you successfully get through the B-Corp assessment. So if you just want to click to the next slide, whoever my slide guru is. So before we go on to that, so yeah, how to certify, like I say, you go through this process, you need to score 80 out of 200 points across the assessment, and away you go. So we'll blow through that one pretty quickly. So yeah, next slide, please. So just to finish off with, I've got some examples of actual questions from the impact assessment. So this is from the governance section. So there's a question before this, which basically says, and it's got multiple options. And one of the options is, do you do an impact report? And are you tracking social and environmental KPIs? So yes, well, if we are we tracking metrics that we've just chosen randomly, or have we done a materiality assessment? And if we have done a materiality assessment, have we identified and measured metrics on that assessment? Well then, and have we got performance targets? So you can see here that essentially what Kate and Alice and the team are offering is a relatively quick win to be able to go, well, yeah, actually we're capturing and measuring all this stuff, and we have done an assessment, and it was done by independent sources, and we have got science-based targets to work towards. If you go to the next one, this is just one of the examples of under the environmental impact business models, one of the environmental questions. Do you have an environmental management system? So are you tracking metrics that you need to be tracking, and have you done an assessment of your organization and how it operates in terms of environmental impact? So again, what the team are offering here, massive contribution towards helping you get some of these points. And then the next one, I think, is the one I was thinking about. Yeah. So again, have you done an environmental assessment or environmental product design? So again, yes, if you've been working with the team here, you'd be able to say, yeah, we've done an LCA equivalent. And possibly you would have done source reduction or toxicity reduction exercise as part of part of the work you might do. And again, you might review product materials design and the recyclability based on the outputs of the project. And then if we go down to the last slide, I think it's the last one I've got. So this is an example of one of the environmental impact business models. So resource conservation. So basically, if you can prove that one of your products is using less resources as compared to industry standards, then great, you can go and have a go at selecting for or going forward for an impact business model. However, can you prove that? And again, it's having that data, having that peer-reviewed data to be able to say, yeah, look, this is the industry standard for this type of product. We've been tracking and measuring our own data, and we can prove that yes, we use less energy, less water. We've got less carbon, and we're using less water, etc., etc. So yeah, that's just a really quick, brief overview and intro. Hopefully that all made sense. That's my last slide. I'm happy to take any questions or move on to whatever Kate's got planned for us next.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Tim. I think every time we talk, I learn more about B-Corp. That was a great presentation, and I expect there will be a lot of questions to dig into the detail. So I'll give everyone an opportunity to have a think about any questions. So feel free to just sort of pop your camera on as an indication that you're about to ask a question, and I'll sort of give you a shout or stick your hand up. Gabby, if you can help to notice if people are sticking their hands up, because I'm trying to look at a few things at once. But I've seen a couple of questions coming through, so I'll take a stab at this first one. So Craig has asked, as a formal financial auditor, I'm interested in the expected levels of assurance for the facts. So that's a really great question, and it's something that we're actually going to work through with the next steering group before we make final confirmation on exactly what the audit process will be. In the first stage, we had some industry representatives, and we spent quite a lot of time talking about the importance of having a really solid auditing process that was also didn't price out the wider market. We want to make this really widely available to all. So we have been looking at quite a lot of the different auditing systems. So as an example, for things like B-Corp, every assessment is audited. In BREEAM, which is a building assessment tool in the UK, they do a random audit, so that you need to have been really diligent about your processes, because you might be subject to audit, but you may not get subject to audit. So there's a whole sort of array of different ways to frame that. But as we go out with a much wider steering group into this pilot phase, we're really keen to hear from industry what is a level of audit that people would feel confident relying on in terms of that credibility piece, but would be sufficiently accessible to make it that everyone can do this. The next question says, would this work for areas like construction? Now, I'd just like to say I'd really like this to be a conversation. So if you're not feeling too shy, I would love it if you would pop your cameras on and say the questions. Anyway, the next one from Tori, would this work for areas like construction, or would that require doing a product assessment for all the various materials? So again, really good question. The construction industry's actually got a lot of data already. So many construction materials have done environmental product disclosures, which are based on life cycle assessments. Planetary Facts basically gives you a really easy to understand, contextualized set of results from an environmental product disclosure. So it's quite easy to take existing data and convert it into Planetary Facts. And there are also calculators like eTool that do a life cycle assessment of a whole building. Now, their level of granularity in terms of the data for each material is pretty high level, so it wouldn't give you the insights about, did you use this provider or that provider if you just converted eTool outputs, but you could get a rough estimate of the Planetary Facts of a building through a process like that. So definitely possible. It would be difficult to do a very detailed one tomorrow, but you could, there's certainly a pretty rapid pathway to get to that point. I'm going to stop. I'll go back to the questions in the chat for a minute. Does anyone want to jump up and ask a question? All right, I'll go to the next question, but please don't be shy. So the next question is, would the Planetary Facts model become adaptable for services in future? That's a very good question. Thanks, Patrick. We've actually just been putting together a plan for adapting it to services. So in particular, at this stage, we've been looking at tourism products and how we can adapt the methodology to make it really robust for, a day of skiing, because that's obviously something we're all passionate about in this team, but also for, a great walk or any sort of tourism product, but likewise for other services. And once we've the adaptation's really just about setting a very clear scope and boundary. So it's reasonably we'll be able to do that reasonably soon. We can do that as a bespoke service now. So if people have services and they want to see what the Planetary Facts are, that's something we can do, but it isn't part of the Planetary Facts pilot at this stage. All right. What other questions have we got? I'm sure we've got a few questions for, oh, here we go. Roger, you have a question.
Kia ora. Thanks to all the presenters. That's been really helpful. I was just wondering, Kate, if you had any plans at a kind of consumer level to enable people to aggregate up the kind of planetary accounting footprint they accumulate during the course of a period of time to understand, an individual level, your impact on the planet.
Yeah, good question. Actually, that consumer interface, or the gamification of that consumer interface, was the original thought before planetary accounting came to be, and I am very keen to see that happening. Once there are enough Planetary Facts labels on the market, I think whether Pan do it, Planetary Insights do it, or other providers do it, that's certainly on the card. So, you know, I imagine, you know, MyFitnessPal meets Strava, so that you can, I like Strava because it gives you that competitive piece. You know, you can become if you don't use Strava, it tracks your bike ride or your walk or your run, but it does legs. And so if I walk up Mount Iron, I can see how I went compared to all the other people in Wanaka who walked up Mount Iron. Very slow, it turns out. It's a pretty speedy community here, but you know, it gives that competitiveness, so you want to move up the ranks. And so I think there's really neat opportunities to gamify it, and also to start you know, looking at household data and things like that, how much water you're using and energy, and building that into a whole perspective with the products that you're purchasing. When we did consumer engagement studies to support the communication side of our Planetary Facts labels, the demand for that came through in just about every focus group. So people were like, oh, I just really want to do that and want to see how I'm going and want to post on Facebook that I'm an eco warrior and, you know, things like that. I have a couple of questions about recordings. So yes, we will have a recording, and yes, there is a cost to be involved in the pilot. So for a typical participant, that really depends on the product complexity. So the pilot's not really for cell phone producers or manufacturers of washing machines. It's really targeted at reasonably simple products. So food and fibre, construction materials. Alice, help me out. What's it called? Cosmetics. So things that have sort of up to about 5 or 6.
Apparel.
Apparel. Yep. Thank you. So those sort of products, and then to do a desktop assessment of 3 of those products. So if you're one company and you say, hey, look, we'll go with the cotton apparel example that Alice has been talking about. We've got a t-shirt, a line of t-shirts, so some shorts and some hats. Then that's between 20. Oh, sorry, everyone. I seem to have suddenly been logged out of Teams, but I seem to be back. So the cost is between 20 to 35 to do the 3 products. We have had a few companies successfully get co-funding for this from a few different sources, and so that's an option that can help to bring that cost down. So if you're interested and that's out of your price range, then do get in touch. We're happy to kind of point you in the direction that others have gone. We're also open to having cohorts. So if you have you and a couple of other friendly companies that you know who would like to come in together, and then we can kind of combine up into some clusters if you have similar supply chain. So there's a few different options to help make it more accessible from a cost perspective. Again, on the digital side, it depends, but it's between 40 to 60,000 depending on the complexity of your products, and that gives you 12 months access to the Planetary Facts calculator. Other questions? I expect there's a few for Tim as well on the B-Corp side. Tim, I was really pleased to see that people can also get points for donating to great charities. So that's another way to get some points. You can just
100%
provide a koha to Pan, and it's as easy as that.
There we go. Two for the price of one.
Exactly.
I've got like a more in-depth ebook which outlines a bit more about B-Corp, which I'm happy to make that available to everyone who joined on the call today, if everyone's happy to receive that from me. Yeah.
Thanks, Tim. That sounds great. I'm happy we can send a recording of this presentation around to everyone on the list. Oh, it looks like Tish might have a question.
Yeah, not so much a question, just more a thank you. So yeah, just wanted to say thanks to you guys for taking the time to do this for the foodie group. I'm going to have to head off soon, but I do think it's a really interesting concept, and I'm looking forward to the day where we can get that kind of information, you know, easily on products that we're wanting to buy. And I know people are very interested in that. So yeah, I think you're onto something, and just let me know what sort of interest levels there are following this. And if we're able to team up with anyone, we would love to team up with someone to bring costs down. So yeah, thanks guys.
Excellent. Thanks heaps, Tish.
Bye everyone. Nice to see you all. See ya.
Fantastic. And I've put the three websites up here, so feel free to reach out via those links to any of us. I'll also send around our direct contact details with the ebook from Tim and with this recording. So if there aren't any other questions, thanks so much, Tim and Alice, for the great presentations. They're really insightful. And thanks to everyone for joining and the great questions and discussion.
Thanks, everyone.